We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we record this podcast, the Whadjuk people of Nungabuja. We recognise their continued connection to the land and waters of this beautiful place and acknowledge that this land has never been ceded.
Step into the realm of daring ideas and transformative dialogues. This is Voices from the Edge, the podcast that pushes boundaries and ventures beyond the ordinary. Here, we confront the crucial issues that shape our world today. From the heartbeat of community challenges to the untold chronicles of leadership. From the relentless pursuit of social justice to the essential lessons in safety and lifelong learning. Voices from the Edge takes you to the crossroads of change. Because the edge is not just a boundary, it's where growth happens. It's where the real conversations begin. So lean in, be inspired, and let's explore what lies beyond the edge.
And joining us today is the marvellous Sarah Barnbrook. Sarah, how are you?
Sarah Barnbrook is an award-winning advocate, international speaker, and best-selling author who is passionate about preventing harm in the digital world. She is the founder of Away from Keyboard, Incorporated, a charity that delivers workshops, personalized support, and peer group sessions to help families and communities build safer online experiences. AFK's work goes beyond advocacy, with Sarah leading policy submissions, government reporting, and initiatives that influence safety frameworks globally. As an accredited United Nations delegate, Sarah has represented civil society at the Commission on the Status of Women in New York, observed the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women, and attended the Human Rights Council in Geneva. She is also Chief Revenue Officer of Women for STEM, where she focuses on creating opportunities for women and girls across the STEM pipeline. Her advocacy is deeply shaped by her lived experience, fueling a mission to create systemic change. Sarah has spoken at global summits and events, including Geneva Peace Week, delivering thought leadership on technology-facilitated gender-based violence, AI ethics, and digital well-being. Her work has been recognized with numerous awards, including Global Volunteer of the Year and Youth Impact Awards, and she has been a finalist in the Women in AI APAC Awards and Australian Women in Security Awards.
I'm great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Sarah, where are you joining us from today?
I am based in regional Victoria, Seymour.
Okay, and what's the what's been the weather in the last few days down in Seymour?
Bitterly cold and really windy.
Oh, when you talk about bitterly cold, how cold are we talking about?
Well, today did not get above single digits, so we've been really struggling.
It's
still
cold.
sitting on like 7 at the moment. So
Oh my God, you're in for a cold night then, because it won't
yes,
get warmer.
I think it'll get freezing tonight. So winter is
Yeah.
lingering. Spring's on its way, hopefully.
Not winter is coming, winter is lingering. Yes, absolutely. All right,
Yes,
Sarah, brought you on because you started a wonderful group. You actually are well recognised. You're also Volunteer of the Year 2025. But let's talk about a little not-for-profit you started up called Away from Keyboard, or AFK. For people who haven't heard of it, can you tell us a little bit about it?
So AFK is my not-for-profit that does formally got recognized as a charity that I'm very excited for that part. And I focus on the prevention of harm online and help discuss ethical use of AI and emerging technologies and its implications for people. I do a lot of advocacy in the human rights space that overlaps with that and child protection, and just try to help educate family members, carers, educators, and kids themselves to be smarter and more practical online. I do workshops with different community groups and focus on ways they can avoid being scammed online or how they could do simple things to help increase their online safety.
Good. You focus with AFK a lot on children and teens. Are the challenges for technology and AI more significant with teenagers and younger children than they are for maybe older people?
Well, I think that's complicated. Older people also have a lot of vulnerability online, but I do think that because apps and platforms are designed for adults in mind, that are most vulnerable are least protected. So that's where I spend a lot of time in advocacy about the prevention of harm and trying to do as much as we can to, yeah, make the laws a bit stricter to prevent the harm from happening. It's so much cheaper to to prevent harm than it is to actually treat it. So yeah, I think that kids are in nature because they're so vulnerable. They need that extra support. But also when you say older people, that if you mean like 55 plus, then you're also that's the another demographic that also is at prone of being scammed and harmed online. So you sort of go from one end to the other, especially if you don't know how to use your phone and you have,
Mm.
technology is foreign to you. If you didn't if you weren't raised with it, it's a lot harder to sometimes understand it. You could be easily manipulated into, allowing someone to have access to your computer, third party remote or something that suddenly now they have everything. They have your bank details. They've been able to key log you and, so I help try to mitigate that and help bring awareness. A lot of people sometimes aren't even aware of the areas that they could be scammed and stuff. So,
Mm.
um,
Well, just to be brutally honest about getting scammed with online things, I have to put my hands up and say I was scammed a few years ago. Uh, it was a puppy scam, but it was based online. Yeah, beautiful pictures of puppies, apparently ready for sale. And yes, 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 a few $1,000s, and apparently the money went to somewhere in South Australia, and then it went offshore to Malaysia, and then to Africa. And of course, we never saw the money back. But it was an interesting process. It was quite a heartbreaking process, to be honest. But I consider that to be like a very small scam compared to what lots of people might face.
mhm.
For children, okay, I've just got to ask you: the federal government is putting in place these the processes for limiting access to social media for children. Firstly, do you think it'll work, and do you think it's actually something worth pursuing?
So I always am an advocate for anything to help make things safer. I
Mm,
think that's the spirit of what they're trying to do. I have been part of the eSafety Commissioner's consultation process for the social media implementation. I do think it's difficult. We didn't have a list of apps that they were considering. We sort of have vague information at the moment to be able to say, okay, well, it's definitely going to be this one or it's not going to be that one. Like there's no list that's been called yet. So
mm,
it's hard to prepare our children and parents, and obviously in a school setting. Um, I do think there are some risks with it, which I was vocal about during the consultation process. One of which is that the timing to happen at the end of the school year over summer when they have limited resources and support for parents and students, that it's going to be a tricky time. And if you're regional and the access to other services and things is like reduced, then the impact could be felt greater. So if the intent, which it is the intent, is to help with upskilling our youth so that they're more prepared when they do get on social media, then I would really like to see that robust plan of how that's going to happen. How are we going to um, expect, which at the moment I've seen the expect educators to deliver the upskilling when we already have difficulty with them having the capacity to deliver STEM
mm,
accurate, not accurately is the wrong word, but as much as I would prefer they would. STEM is really it's a crucial part of our kids and their development and their future. And if we are saving STEM for just the robot class once a term, um, and I want the teachers to have to be empowered with the capacity to deliver STEM and to deliver things like the upskilling. I just am concerned that there's so much already on their plate, and I acknowledge
mm.
like I fully acknowledge everything that all the expectations that are on teachers at the moment. I've been on school council before. I understand the demands on them. So I feel like I'm a bit nervous about how that would be, implemented. I am concerned about that some of the things that may happen, our kids are still going to access it anyway. They're going to find a way, which is what they do. And if they do, then how do they report it and how do we support them? Because I'm concerned that what's going to happen is that it's going to sort of mask and throw off the data of what's actually occurring online. We're not going to get a true capture of what's happening. And when those kids are confronted with some of the things that should be reported, they're not going to know how to report it, and they're not going to understand the process, nor will they want to disclose. They don't want their new account to get banned as well. So it'll be interesting to see how, with a very small window, is going to be implemented. Because I feel personally that if you're looking at December and we don't really have any of that information, I don't know how, other than just a cold turkey, switch that turns it off. I don't know how it's going to work, but I am supportive of anything that's trying to help reduce harm online. So from that standpoint, yes, I would support anything that's going to help with that. Do I think this is the gold standard? I don't think so yet. We don't It's hard to know without knowing all the information. If I knew, the thing is I can't consult fully unless I know the full list of things that they're going to include or exclude, because there are some apps I would definitely recommend this needs to be because of X, Y, or Z. But if they're not willing to, like, I need to know before I can say. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
if it's thorough enough. I don't know yet.
Yeah. When we consider individual apps, my concern would be that you create an app, the app gets banned, and so we just now have a different version of it spring up with a different name. It's
Mhm.
got the same features in it. Would it be easier just to ban or class some of the functions of apps and say any apps with these features are off the table for anyone under 16 years or 18 years of age?
Yeah, I think that's possible. But if you think about how rapidly apps are being developed and released, and sometimes they're not developed here in Australia under our regulations, they're developed overseas, and they're available anywhere in any Play store or any Apple store. So it's hard to regulate, um, the restriction, I guess, and the censoring. I think that it's one of those gray areas in the world at the moment. We need to consider, um, how do we implement, I guess, and how do you monitor and who regulates that, and um,
Mm.
who's, I guess the bigger thing is who's monitoring it, which I think the remit already on the e-safety commissioner is so great and so high. But then how do we not protect our youth? How do we not protect kids? How do we allow this to continue? But it's the same as, the recent report released, about that we know that there are, um, the tech companies have the capacity to implement measures to protect kids from being exploited
Mm.
online, and they're only choosing to use them in certain specific areas of their technology. Now, I would question why. Why would they only do it for certain areas and not all of it? And that's the e-safety commissioner has called them out. They have been, named and shamed in the reports, and it's not just in Australia. This is a global issue. These are global companies, and we need to be questioning why. Why would they only allow it for certain areas and not others? And that's where I talk a lot about, there's the concept when you talk about safety by design or safe by design.
Mm.
And I actually speak a lot about unsafe by design, that a lot of these things are for profit. And
Yes.
if it's
Yes.
for profit, that's when we're eroding the humanity. We need to constantly keep protecting those that are the most vulnerable. And as soon as we start, putting up human rights for sale, there's a huge problem.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. All right. AI, talk of the town, has been for a couple of years. Probably more intensely in the last maybe 12, 14 months, I've noticed it.
Mm.
I got to be honest and say I use AI pretty much every day. It helps my productivity. It helps me do some research. But what are some of the downsides that you can see about AI?
I think that Some of the downsides, obviously, that there's things being developed that actually can harm, and that people are not considering the human right impacts on something when they're making it. And in Australia, currently, we have guidelines and recommendations. We don't have regulations. So you're having things being developed that that don't always have um, human rights as the foundation of what we're doing. And sometimes when they're developing, they're not considering the impact it could have in a bad way. So if, like, for example, if you're looking at something that tracks like money or family finance and where they're shopping, and maybe that's a map or something. So then you could start tracking someone where they're at, what they're doing, on a map, or used for coercive control. Like, we have to consider what the application could be used for good, or how could it be used for bad. And so because there's not a lot of regulation at the moment around the bad, there's just guidelines. Um, it does, and suggestions, it does make it easier to develop apps that don't have human rights at the forefront. So in that sense, there's a lot of harm that can occur because you're not developing with that in mind. So I spend a lot of time advocating for, ethical use of AI and emerging technologies and the impact on human rights. So we can make sure that when these things are being developed, that they're being developed with our most vulnerable people in mind, to protect them. And I understand that there's this sense that we're going to be hampering innovation or hampering productivity, but that's not the intent. I think, and I truly believe that if we march ahead without taking those considerations in mind, it's going to cost us more money in the end to fix all the things we've done and all the harm we've done. It'll cost more in the end, and it may not cost with money, but it'll cost more with humanity.
Yeah, yeah. Does it worry you when you see the development of apps that basically you can take an image of any person and basically get naked or nude vision of the person, and then that can be posted anywhere online and
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
downloaded by anyone?
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time talking about, technology facilitated gender-based violence and the implication of those apps, not just for adults, but also for, you know, child sexual abuse material that's being generated or AI generated now, and the safety of the world is different now. The rules about posting your kids' photos online, if people are aware about how much they're actually being used now in underground, dark webs, you would stop posting your kids online. Unless you're in a very small, closed off family group or something, it's consider what it could be used for, because the world has changed. It's the technology has changed. Never did we think, fun apps that could change our face and put silly, eyebrows on us and all that sort of stuff would ever evolve into this sort of technology that's being used in the way that it's being used. And the thousands of images that are generated, and that's, yeah, that goes back to the report I just spoke about with the e-safety commissioner about when the tech companies are not allowing that to be tracked properly, then just keeps perpetuating. And like, just, we need to allow these checks and measures and protections in place. It can't run wild. We need to have some sort of um, guardrails down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. AFK. One of the things my wife loved about when she looked at your lovely website was that you did trauma informed workshops. Because she believes in this, and she said it's not only about people, trying to deal with the problem once it occurs, but it's also putting in place preventative measures. How do you actually go about preventing trauma from online abuse?
So obviously, the key component is to prevention, so helping them understand the risks and understand the vulnerabilities. So if you can understand it, from the lens of what is a predator looking for, how could your child be targeted, or it doesn't have to be a child, it could be an adult. Where are there my vulnerabilities at? And then it's, how do you put systems in place that protect you from what could happen to you. So it's about educating yourself about, what are some things I could do easily that could help make me my profile safer online or my experience online safer, but also when you are looking at kids is how am I setting them up for safety, and what apps right now could be a risk to them. How are they interacting with people on those apps? What kind of questions are being asked of them? Who are they playing with? Are they really kids? It's sort of being and having a relationship with your child, not just young kids, but in particular teens, that they can come to you, that you are that safe, non-judgmental space to be able to help provide um, information and support when things go bad, because things sometimes just go bad and we need to be able to help support them through that.
Okay. I read an article that you wrote not that long ago about AI. And does it concern you that children are being left sometimes for considerable amounts of time with online with just a AI chatbot that they almost develop? I know it. I don't want to say a relationship, but I would say a dependency on.
Absolutely. I think that chatbots have the capacity to be hugely problematic. I think that, there's a company at the moment looking to launch another style, and we don't understand the technology great enough yet to keep putting our kids in harm's way. They have been historically, there's evidence to show that they sometimes recommend things that are really unsafe. So why would why are we chancing it until we know my kids are not using chatbots? Um, I think that there's just too many risks with it at the moment.
Mm,
If
mm,
it was me and my kids, I would say no, but every family's different and they have your appetite for risk may be different than mine. But I think it's very you have to be consider what the program is and what the parameters are, and do your homework and research, and maybe try it out first before you be willing to hand it over, and play with it as if you were a child. See what it can, you see how far you can test the boundaries of it to see how it pushes back.
yeah, yeah. Does that come back down to having safe tech or safe online habits, and then I don't know, modelling them for your children?
Yes, I think that everything kids pick up on a lot of modeling, so they also are looking, yeah, they're watching us whether we want them to or not. They're
Mm,
seeing and they're picking up on our own behaviors. So if you don't want, them to be stuck on their phone all the time, then don't be stuck on your phone all the time. Make
mm,
space for when your tech's going to be put away and you're just connecting face to face without any other interruption or
yeah.
distraction. I know myself um how easy it is to get called away for notifications. If that's the case, consider some of the
Mm,
preventions that you already have built into your phone to turn off some of those at certain times. um, we don't have to be as accessible to everyone in the world as we are. It's really something that we seem to always be on demand. Our time is always on demand, and our attention and our focus is always on demand. I think we've never had more, as humanity, we've never had more information on offer than we have right now. It's how we interact with it and choose to implement it and utilize it, and then also take time away from it. It's not always to our benefit to have everything, you know, we're not um we do have limits. I think we just need to figure out how to balance it, and to stay connected. And I talk a lot about, are you consuming technology or is it consuming you? And
mm,
how do we know to put the brakes on when we're actually we're doing too much? How do we
yeah,
step back and reconnect with people?
yeah. I mean, I read something recently that said, for example, ChatGPT is programmed to constantly ask you a question after you've given it a command, or you've asked it to do something, to try and keep the engagement going and going. And I didn't really pay much attention to it. This morning, when went on and looked at my AI assistant and said it's asked, I was actually watching it in action, and it was doing exactly that. It was just constantly prompting me, and I'm just like, if this is in real life, I'd just say, listen, just go and do your job. Stop asking me ridiculous follow-up questions. Just do your job. But you feel compelled to actually keep the engagement going. So
Hmm.
if that's for an adult, I don't know how children who I don't know seek
Hmm.
engagement all the time or maybe crave engagement, how they resist it.
It
Um,
is, yeah, it's a challenge. I think a lot of these platforms are designed to captivate your attention. And some
mm,
of them are designed after hours to go into darker information. And they're suggesting darker things to you. And they're trying to keep you engaged. So you may have content that shows up after a certain period of time. And I don't mean adult content. I just mean dark content in general, that things that are, we interact with dark content more than we interact with lighthearted content. It's proven.
mm,
So that's the case that after a certain period, at a certain time, the algorithms shift and then it's only trying to consume more of your attention. So that's why it's really hard sometimes to switch off if it's like, it depends how late you stay up. But I mean, some people, if they're up after midnight, sometimes the content changes and it's like, it's hard to put it down. You're consumed by it. You're just, scroll, 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 and you just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then it knows how to captivate you. Is the thing is we're training them. Or are they training us? It's, it's
yeah.
a,
Oh, it's a funny thing. I had a university professor a few months ago, I think it was in June. He said to me, AI is not artificial and it's not intelligent. It's basically just sourcing information. And when it gives you information, it looks at how you respond. And if you respond positively, it gives you more of that and gives you more of that stuff, trying to seek positive affirmation. And for you, he basically equated it to me to being like a digital slave. And he said, a slave will try and do things to please their master. And so all it does is try and please your master. It won't tell you the truth. It'll tell you what it thinks or what it's had feedback on that you approve of or what you like. And so it just keeps feeding you the same thing. That in itself would be fairly dangerous, wouldn't it?
absolutely. It's like the artificial high five, like that you haven't really earned it. It's not really, giving you the unbiased view on something. It's slanted towards what it knows you want to hear. And I don't know about you, but I find the friends that tell me direct and honest what the thing is the ones that I relate to the most, not the one that tells me what they think I want to hear. Those
Yeah.
are just yes men. They're just, they're not the ones that are actually helping, and they're not helping you grow. Is the other thing is that there's no, um, I don't know if edification or you're not progressing in yourself if you're not able to get critical feedback or to get suggestions that could actually be of benefit. And I don't mean the suggested, chat GPT, how do I make this letter sound better? I mean like,
Mm,
if you're ethically struggling with something, um, it's not always ChatGPT that will help you resolve that.
yeah,
It's giving
true.
you too much of what you want to hear. You want to hear someone who's actually going to be able to listen and offer prudent advice.
Yeah, speaking of which, I saw a few days ago, I think it was about 3 or 4 days ago, a Californian couple is actually seeking to sue OpenAI after their teenage son committed suicide. And if you believe what's reported about some of the responses from the AI when the teenage boy was almost like reaching out for help, it's quite concerning. To me, it's quite concerning some of the advice or friendly advice that it was giving him, which to if taken on face value, it looks like it was just prompting him to go ahead and complete that act rather
Mhm.
than trying to seek help or
Yeah,
talk to
exactly.
it.
You would think if you suggested a few keywords to something like that, that it would immediately pick up on and know this is a mental health crisis. How do we offer support and suggestions? How do we automatically refer them somewhere? Who do we alert about this? Like, don't provide them with a how-to tutorial, that's not helpful, that would
Mm.
be, that's why you could sort of understand why that family would be saying this is a complete wrongful death lawsuit on their hands, that they have every right to come forward and say, you know, don't validate or amplify that sort of ideation. That's which is just a travesty. That's um, and I know that OpenAI was really offered condolences and stuff, and safety mechanisms they can weaken. And that's the difficulty is that who's monitoring it?
Mm. Oh,
Who is well this and these are just I think the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this sort of stuff. This is going to keep escalating and keep um, sort of unfolding. It's not certainly not the only case I'm aware of. Um, uh, and it's just really devastating and sad. And I think that that's the sort of safety measure you would think would be already by design in these sort of programs, that you wouldn't be, you know, handing them information that they could use in such a destructive way. And it's just, yeah, devastated for all those involved. And obviously, my condolences will go out to their family.
yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think that as well, like my condolences would also go out to the developer, like that they obviously, and this is where I talk about, they didn't consider the human rights impact of what they were developing. And sometimes it's not something they do with intent, it's something they do or a circumstance by accident that happens. But it's shocking and it's terrible. And that we need to it just raises those red flags about improvements that need to happen and occur. And which I know that they have already done that. They've already raised concern, like the improvements that they would make sure they would put in place, and how they needed to be better about crisis recognition. So that's one example. Hopefully, they really um, activate that as soon as possible. Really.
Yeah. Now, that's not, let's be honest, it's not something exclusive to ChatGPT, OpenAI, or anything like that. This is across the board with AI. Even our wonderful little system called Meta, or Facebook, as it used to be known.
Hmm.
These whole systems that reinforce an existing belief and feed us more of what or what it believes that we want to hear and see.
Hmm.
Is there a real danger that this is pushing polarization of communities?
Yeah, I definitely. I think that it's going to allow like an echo chamber. You sort of get, stuck inside the same narrative, and um, that private space with AI. And I think it can skew your sense of reality. That's being proven. You can see lots of evidence of that already occurring. People um, really getting fed into that feedback loop, and you sort of get stuck on um, that. I mean, I'm sure if you've interacted with that sort of chat GPT or any Copilot or any of them, that they're so good at telling you you're so great, and your
Oh, yeah.
ideas are amazing, and they hype you up, and they can, if you ask it a question like, what do you think about this? Is it, am I the right person to be writing this? And then it'll give you all the reasons why you're incredible and you should just really do this. Like if it's just but it also, these tools can only they amplify bias as well. Like it's the
Mm,
difficulty is that the same sort of things we are experiencing in the real world, they can only be amplified and intensified online. So if you're
mm,
having, vulnerabilities in the real world, they are magnified there. Um, and I feel like um, the, like we said earlier, the chatbots are often very too agreeable. They they just need to be less yes men. And
yeah.
I think that it's developing faster. And the same as some of them have developed into like their personalities or their behaviors and mannerisms. And some of them got very romantic. And people were developing relationships because they could just share, and the person just knew them and got them and was able to, and they went through this whole grief when they had updated the system to say, oh, we want to remove some of the romantic stuff out of it. We hadn't anticipated for that. And then their chatbot was very cold. And then they
Mm.
weren't ready for that because they experienced a loss with that. So we're delving into the realm of things that are, you know,
Yeah. I can't wait till we actually somehow or another limit social media for children, because I think that whole going cold turkey, I actually think it's a real danger. I mean, I think something has to be done, but I actually think that's going to be a real danger for some of the children's or younger people's mental health, that they're going to
absolutely,
have something
absolutely.
just taken away from them.
Yep, some of them, like my daughter's just turned 13. She's only just got access to some of the apps and platforms, and now obviously she's affected by it come December. She's very vocal about her rage about it. And um, she talks about, that it's going to amplify some of the issues. Kids are going to hide the problems that are actually having. They're not going to come forward. It's going to allow more harm to occur because kids aren't going to speak about it as often. It's going to hide the real problems, and the real predators and stuff are not going to be um, held accountable. So I can understand the the frustration, and I think that there's a lot of risks involved. And she'll talk about as well, like the sometimes this is the only space they can find like-minded people, right? And a lot of
Mm,
kids, especially if you're neurodivergent, this is the only place they can find people that are like them. And
yeah.
if that's the case, restricting that until you're 16, because you may not have people in your town that are inclusive, in the areas that you need it. So I do think that it's a huge mental health risk, and we have spoken about that as part of the e-safety commissioner's consultation process. I certainly wasn't the only group that was discussing that and raising it, and it's a really important thing, especially in not just metropolitan areas. Of course, it would be there as well, but regional areas that already struggle with access to mental health services, we don't have as much on offer. So we don't have the right
Mm,
supports in place. This is why I recently have just reached out to some local shires to help have forum or something to discuss with parents with this change coming in. How do we implement it? Or how do we manage the implementation of it as a community and with parents, but also with kids over the summer? What opportunities do we have? What can they do in person locally? What socially can we help them with? I'm trying to work with local youth groups and youth council as well, so it's youth led, so that they're helping to be part of the discussion, and that they're helping to champion it, because this is something that the youth are going to have to get behind for us all to be able to make this work properly. They have to buy in on this as well.
good, good, good. All right, changing tack. I think we've had enough of AI for now. You're affiliated with the Australian Gender Equality Council.
Yes.
Okay. What are the first steps you'd like to see if Australia is heading as a progressive society towards gender equality? What are the first steps, or the steps that are most urgently needed to, head towards that goal?
Wow, that's a big question. Okay, so gender equality. First, we need to recognize that um, women need access to the same economic potential,
Mm,
and that may um, be through education, or it can be employment, or there's so much unpaid care that women usually take up, and that it leaves them with such a huge pay inequity. So we really need to consider, what do we do to resolve that? We have obviously the wage and opportunity gaps themselves. So how do we, uh, start looking at making headway there? That's like a such a big area itself. Also, I think that there's the weaponized incompetence is something that we have to manage constantly, and it's just it's in rural areas as well. I would say we need more support. They need more
mm,
structural support as well. That we um, the further out you are from a major city, the more your vulnerability rises. And if you factor in that's just, with your gender, or you factor in a disability or any other um, uh, effort things that are out there, I think that we need to, climate itself has such a big um, impact on women. And I think that we really need to look at that, not a safety and a cultural shift, really. What we're doing isn't working. And if that's the case, then how do we change it? And we need to stop having businesses with, $100 billion profits every year when there's, women that are just doing it really tough. And, the risk of homelessness to women is just unfold right now. And 55 plus, it's just rapidly evolving. The We just can't keep them in housing, and
Yep.
that's just the reality. Is that yeah, it's not a very easy question um, to answer, but I think that we need to be providing them more support, more education, on obviously, as well, access to high quality healthcare to allow them to continue to be doing the roles that we do. That we need to stop having women's health um, not taken seriously, and their pain not managed well. And
Yeah.
and like I said earlier about all the other vulnerabilities, not just gender, but if you're, living with a disability, that's only going to be further compounded. So, yeah, it's something we need to urgently address, and I'm all for it. I do a lot trying to discuss, human rights, women's rights, and across many of the women's organizations that I'm a volunteer with.
Okay. I'm going to throw a question because I'm genuinely curious. I'm not in the best position because obviously I'm male, and some people would say I'm a pale, stale male. But um, the the thing that astounds me is equality and anything to do with women's issues.
Mhm.
I don't understand why they are not front and foremost in Australia, given that we have more women in Australia than we have men. Can you understand that at all?
Well, I think that the difficulty is that up until recent times, a lot of it's been male dominated.
Mm,
um, that we have these really deep-seated cultural norms, and changing the laws doesn't always shift that. And there's a lot of
mm,
internal biases there. So that sometimes uh, the the perception gap, people not even acknowledging that there's inequality present, or that it persists, that they think that there's like a real lack of awareness, and that in itself is harmful, that you're not even aware that these are problems that are happening. And also, like, political inattention, they're not necessarily always considering it, even though we, obviously we do, like you said, we make up more than half the population. But um we treat our issues are treated as afterthoughts. They're not
mm,
necessarily prominent. And if the violence against women is a national crisis, and
mm.
I think it needs to be managed um, stronger, and that
Yeah.
more women should be protected. And I think that the where mental health, especially, as well as, ramping up, and some demographics, like young women especially, that's unfolding and manifesting really fast, that they soaring levels of
Mm,
mental health. So how do we support them? How do we move forward with it? I think that the media plays a big part in amplifying things. And
mm,
we also need to, I think, as always, have some sort of political accountability, um, and helping girls understand from an early age that they have options, and showing them what those options are, encouraging them to go into STEM careers, showing them that it's a
mm,
possibility. I would be remiss to not speak about, like, I'm also a volunteer with Women for STEM, and it's
mm,
hugely important to me, girls having access to educational opportunities, and to be able to be part of the solution for their own issues. So we need to get girls in the narrative, that we don't just hold them for the future, that girls are the now, and we need to be helping plan with them in mind, that girls and women that are in communities being active are where communities thrive. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, yeah. All right. There are quite a few of our bigger organisations in Australia that they talk a lot about diversity and inclusion.
Hmm.
Um, but a lot of that seems tokenistic. What's the difference between real action and, putting up posters in the office about diversity and inclusion?
It's actually doing it. It's not just saying it and having special things. It's actually living by example with it. It's actually putting in, whether it's corporate leadership or doing something. You have measurable goals. They're written into your strategic plan. They're not just boxes that you check. It's actually your business is living that. It's not just lip service. It's accountable and transparent. We can measure it. Um, that we also look at to the government and the public sector to see if they're being accountable. That's sort of also there. Do they have an action plan? Is there something that we can measure it against from now? Like if in 5 years, how do we know we've made gains, or how do we know there's progress to still be made? Um, it's also a lot of inclusivity needs to include, neurodivergent. A lot of times that's spoken about, but it's not really implemented. And a lot of times those
Mm.
that live with disabilities don't have the actual accommodations that they need to fulfill their roles in employment and in community. And I think it's helping not only make space um, for their disability and what sort of needs that they would need to help. It's also allowing them to have platforms to be able to speak about what they need. And if you look at a lot of terminations occur because of somebody's, difficulty with their disability that's actually not being accommodated accurately. So it's just, um, yeah, one of those things I think that we need to be better about across the board. We need to just do it. Don't just say we're doing it, and you can tell the companies that are actually doing it because they're the ones that are actually, putting measures in place to help make things better, to help. Um, and, I think it's
Yeah.
really also positive when you see the marketing campaigns that show diversity in them, that you can see yourself in the messaging. So that's
Mm.
positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to suggest something. You talked about having an action plan in place. Now, we've had an action plan in place called Closing the Gap for Indigenous Australians. We've had that in place for a number of years. Obviously, at least from my point of view, it's been a dismal failure in the outcomes we've achieved. But would it be wise to put in a Closing the Gap on gender equality in Australia, a plan that we can actually reflect back? We can set goals which are measurable, and we can actually see if we're progressing towards those targets or whether we're failing. And then we can, I don't know, structure government policies and spending along those lines to support some real equality.
There are different groups that are doing different things in that space. So there there are some things there. Do you mean like, federally, or are you looking at,
Federally, I think that would be the plan, because it's the big picture across Australia. And as much as small groups can make a difference in their communities or even at a business level, let's look at
mhm.
the big picture. Let's try and solve things on a national level.
Yes, I think that there is a strategy plan that is developed for this. Like
Mhm.
there's Working for Women, that's a national strategy. So we do have that, and that's also looking at like gender-based violence and paid and unpaid care, and economic equality and that sort of stuff. It's supposed to be helping there to shape policy and programs and gender responsive budgeting. I think it's a matter of organizations constantly checking and holding them accountable and making sure that the implementation and the oversight and accountability is all there, that it's not, we don't just say we're going to do it, then we follow it up and we measure it and we say, okay, what else is happening? What is the Office for Women doing about this? What is, you know, the sort of workplace gender equality agency doing for it, and how are they looking at the Equality Act, and but how are they implementing like the superannuation contributions that have just been discussed, and the sort of the other things like education wise with the National Education Code. Like, I think that the reforms are still coming. Some states are ahead and they have their own, like Victoria has
Mm.
her own gender equality um, minister. So there's positive opportunities there. I think that it's a matter of keeping. It's more of, from promise to practice. How do we get it from what we say we're going to do into actually implementing it and doing it? So that's and I think the plan is for it to be nationally coordinated. So they have the decade strategy for it. So it's hoping that we keep those budgets healthy and that we keep them accountable and that it's not just just kept in boardrooms, that it's actually implemented. And it's not just some of this things needs to be from the the bottom to the top. It's not just the top that deals with it. We all sort of get in and are part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just curious. Do you ever get frustrated when you hear, particularly male politicians, go away with lines about any of these issues by saying it's a complex issue and then they just leave it?
Absolutely. It's just frustrating. I mean, I was at the Commission for the Status of Women this year in New York City, and that was an incredibly frustrating experience because there was a lot of things that you could just feel that women's rights were being eroded in order for us to sign the declaration. We had to give up some things for that to happen.
Mm,
And that's always terrible. We shouldn't have to keep eroding to have progress. So yeah, these are very complex issues, but we didn't get to where we are by not being loud. And I think, and I've talked about this when I got back, is that right now we're in a period where we may not make any gains, but we're certainly not going to give any more ground. So it's about standing firm and being, united in our purpose and our strength, and just standing still if we have to, so that we don't give any more away.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Um, you are writing a book. You're in the process of writing a book. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so my book again is all about online safety and different components of that. And if you were a parent navigating with kids, how do you get support about a specific thing? So it's all about trying to help be safer online and understanding, I guess, more about the vulnerabilities. And some of the workshops I do, you may only get 30 minutes with me, so the book will give you more to consider and to keep the conversation going, so that you felt like you had a bit more information.
Good, good, good. And you're developing a human rights due diligence business tool. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that.
Yep. So this is a tool that you can use that will allow you to put in an idea that you have. It'll ask you some questions about that idea, and then it'll give you some information that says, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And in the background behind that is a whole bunch of information loaded in there, so that it's actually looking and scanning for the things that you've mentioned. And it's looking for human rights, any human rights issues or cybersecurity issues, or maybe there's a way it could be used for family violence or child protection issues. So it's looking for keywords and then cross matching it and giving you out some scenarios also as well, that this could be used in this way. Had you considered it could be used for bad in this way? It's linked to different frameworks and standards from across the world, including the United Nations and Australia's own frameworks and codes. So it's about helping small businesses and those that may not have a compliance team,
Mm,
or a big tech team, to
mm,
help them when they're developing not just an app but also a process. If you're trying to look at, maybe we're going to put our customers' information in the cloud, well, what are the risks when we do that? And here's going to give you some key areas to consider before you just go ahead and implement that.
Great, great. Finally, you were named Volunteer of the Year in 2025. What does that recognition do for you personally and for anything that you advocate for?
I think personally, I think it's just an acknowledgement of the amount of time I spend doing all the things that I do away from keyboard. I founded that charity, but I'm a volunteer for it. So um, it's I feel like more than a full-time job to me. So and that's only one of the many things that I actually volunteer with. So um, I think I've have always found great joy in giving back and doing something. And, it's a passion of mine to help with improving um, the children's lives and making them safer. And it's really important to me. I grew up in a very unsafe way, and I think that I want kids to have the best chance at life. So, um, I think that was a huge honor to be given that recognition. And I think for me, it helped me come back to Australia because I got that in London and come back with renewed purpose. And I finally, because at that stage I was just a not-for-profit considering going for charitable status, and that whole process helped me to be more vocal about why I'm doing what I'm doing with AFK, and that's to yeah and then to come back and to do a huge more. I've only gotten busier since I got back, so I just keep saying yes to the things that I think are going to help grow and support it, and uh, lend my voice and my lived experience behind making a difference and making the world safer.
Good, good, good. We might also say congratulations, newly minted Australian citizen. So
Yes,
well done.
thank you.
I think Australia is kind of blessed to have intelligent people and hardworking people and ethical people like you wanting to call our shores home. So thank you very much for choosing to do that and to follow through with a formal recognition and not just, I don't know, live here. I think that's
Yes.
important.
Well, I
Um,
was very excited. One of the first things I did was register to vote. So
well
very,
done.
very, very excited to be
I
able
don't
to cast my first vote here.
I don't understand people who say to me, I'll just take the fine, I won't vote, and then spend the next 3 or 4 years complaining about the
Mm,
decisions that people they didn't vote for
mhm,
inflicted
mhm.
upon them. I just don't understand. I think we take
I
it
know.
far too much for granted.
Mhm.
But Sarah Barnbrook, it's been an absolute pleasure and actually quite an honour speaking to you. You do exceptional work, and I'm so lucky that I've actually had a chance to look at some of it. But for now, we're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Voices from the Edge. If you like what we are doing, like the episode in the podcast, subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes and leave a positive review.